We've been looking at the ancient history of the Middle East. In this third presentation, we'll look at the Greek Empire. But first, we'll take a quick look at the mighty Persian Empire. The Persians controlled all of what is now considered the Middle East today, but they came to a place where they could not expand any further. The powerful Indians, with their fearsome war elephants, stopped the Persians at the Indus River, and they could not penetrate further into the rugged terrain of present-day Afghanistan, nor could the Persians venture into the Arabian desert. The Persians had conquered the ancient kingdom of Egypt, but they could not move past the vast wasteland of the Sahara Desert or the swamps of the Sudan. To the north, the fierce Scythians prevented further expansion. So, the only place for the Persian Empire to expand was to the west, into the land of the Greeks. Looking at it on paper, it would seem that the Persians would have no problem taking over the little bit of land that the Greeks occupied, especially when you consider that the Greeks never really unified. They settled in several city-states. They had established colonies on the islands and the coast of what is now Turkey. These Greek cities came under the control of the Persian Empire. Now, on the mainland of the land of the Greeks, the largest of these city-states were Athens, Sparta, Thebes, and Corinth. These were the largest cities, but there were, it seemed, hundreds of little tiny states in this little bit of land. When you read through the history of ancient Greece, it seems like the land should be huge because of all the little principalities. These states often fought against each other, particularly Athens against Sparta. But they did come together in times of great peril, like when the Persians attacked. In 490 BCE, a Persian army landed at the beach of Marathon, but they suffered defeat from a small Greek force and they left. The marathon race was later created to honor the messenger who ran the 26-point-something miles from Marathon to Athens with the news of the Greek victory. 10 years later, in 480 BCE, the Persians returned with a host of 1,000,000 men. King Xerxes gathered forces from every part of the Persian Empire. There was even a contingent of Jewish fighters in this army. The narrow pass of Thermopylae. This is where the 300 Spartans gained their fame for halting this massive host. 300 men stopping a 1,000,000-man host. It's quite a story. But the Spartans couldn't stop the Persians forever. They came to Athens. The Greeks fled, and the Persians burned the city of Athens to the ground. But then a great naval battle was fought not far away from Athens, and the Greeks inflicted enough damage on the Persian fleet so that they had to leave once again. The mighty Persian Empire failed to conquer the tiny land of the Greeks. After these wars, the city of Athens experienced an explosion of artistic achievements. Those of you who have gone to college and took a class in Western civilization, you probably spent a lot of time discussing ancient Greek culture. This is because so much of our modern culture today comes from ancient Greece, actually from ancient Athens. A lot of our architecture comes from the ideas that the Greeks had established. Greek temples inspired many of our bank buildings and courthouses, especially the ones built in the early part of the 20th century. The Greeks had been working on democracy before the Persian invasions. It took the people of Athens about 50 years or so to develop the idea that all free men who owned property could sit in the assembly and vote on how to run things in the city. The state of Sparta hated the democracy of Athens. They feared that their peasants would overthrow the government and introduce Athenian-style democracy. The people of Athens had also worked on the idea of dramatic presentations. At religious festivals, the chorus sang of the feats of the gods, but then they introduced an actor to have a dialogue with the chorus, then a second actor to dialogue with the first actor in the chorus. Eventually, the chorus finally disappeared, and the actors remained. After the Persian invasions, playwrights wrote plays. Men like Sophocles, Euripides, Aeschylus, Aristophanes. We are still talking about their plays today. They are powerful works that speak to the human condition right down to our present day. And our whole idea of live theater comes from the ancient Greeks. Another legacy of ancient Greece is the idea of sports. You might say that the Greeks invented athletic competition. And the years after the Persian invasion saw an explosion of great sculpture, painting, and poetry. Most of the paintings have not survived today, but many of the sculptures have survived in one form or another. As time went on, Athens fought against Sparta in a long, drawn-out war. This is known as the Peloponnesian War. The fighting went on for several years until the treasury and the resources of Athens was exhausted. And that's when the great philosophers developed their ideas. These are men like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. The ideas that they came up with are still influencing Europe and America today. They talked of spiritual ideals. They talked about how the physical world is inferior to the spiritual world. Our entire philosophical, religious outlook is based on the works of these Greek philosophers. The reason why we have colleges and universities today is because of people like Aristotle. The Western world today owes much to the ancient Greeks. And that's why it comes to a shock to people in Europe and America when we discover that the people in the Middle East don't really share the same views, even though Greek thought was forced upon the people of the Middle East. In the 330s BCE, about 150 years after the end of the Persian invasion, Alexander the Great invaded the Middle East. Alexander came from Macedonia, north of the Greek lands, in what used to be Yugoslavia. Alexander's father and the Macedonians defeated the Greeks in battle, and after Alexander's father died, the Greeks recognized Alexander as the ruler of all the Greeks. So Alexander gathered his army and set off to fight the vast Persian Empire. The Greeks defeated the Persians at the Battle of Granicus. Then they moved through Anatolia and defeated the Persian army again at Issus. Alexander went down to Egypt and founded the city of Alexandria, the first of about 10 cities with the same name. The Alexandria in Egypt went on to become one of the greatest cities in the ancient world. The Greeks then marched into what is now Iraq and defeated the Persians at the Battle of Gaugamela. The Persians could offer no more resistance after that. Alexander took over the city of Babylon. Then he marched across present-day Iran into Afghanistan and Pakistan and came up against the mighty war elephants of the Indians. The Greeks could make no further progress than the Persians had made. So Alexander returned to Babylon, where he suddenly died at the young age of 33 years. The Greeks brought their civilization with them into the Middle East. They brought their ideas of democracy and intellectual reasoning. To those of us in the West, these are ideas that we've grown up with. To people in the Middle East, however, they are foreign ideas. You see, people in the Middle East today don't talk about Alexander the Great. They refer to him as Alexander the Invader, Alexander the Villain, or even worse names. One of the things that we talk about today is what would have happened if Hitler had won World War II. To the people in the Middle East, Hitler did win. That's how they view the victory of the Greeks over the Persians. Now, the Greek Empire didn't last long. Alexander's generals divided the territory after his death. Some of the Greek states lasted quite a long time. Ptolemy's kingdom in Egypt continued for a couple hundred years until the Romans finally defeated Cleopatra. But in other places, the people of the Middle East established their own kingdoms. The Armenians, the Parthians, even the Jews gained independence. Greek temples and other buildings can still be seen throughout the Middle East, but the Greek ideas, for the most part, were rejected. Concepts like democracy and the fair play of athletic competition are still foreign in many places of the Middle East. And long afterwards, historians of the Middle East looked back at the Greek invasion, and one of the lessons that they learned was that outsiders might come and conquer their territory for a while, but they always leave. This was the first time that people of the West had conquered the Middle East, but it was not going to be the last time. Next time, we'll look how the Romans came into the Middle East.